Have you taken some time, students, to understand this term, fascism, its origin, what it means, and how it's applied in society? It's a very interesting concept, and we're going to take a look at this closely in this lecture and begin to understand what fascism is and how that plays out in society. But more importantly, this is a form of government. When we talk about forms of government in our previous discussion, fascism is one of the forms of governance, and we want to understand this within the context of society and within the context of political structure and how that plays out in real life. Now, fascism is a far right, often far right. Please take note of this, students. It's very important for us to understand the leaning, the ideological leaning that is really propelling and motivating fascism across the world. And sadly, this is on the rise in our world today. We have fascist governments that are propping up in different parts of the world, and we want to see why they are propping up and what is the motivation for that. But more importantly, how does that impact society? So, fascism is a far right ideology, all right? And if it's far right ideology, what are we talking about, students? We're talking about really extreme far right. Some people will call it right wingers, right? And this is not conservatism. Conservatism is a different idea, different ideology. Conservatism is not, it's not necessarily far right. It just simply means that your ideas are traditional, your ideas have not changed as much, and your ideas are pretty much stagnant. Just holding on to the old traditions that you're used to, etc., etc. But fascism is a far right, authoritarian, ultra national. Please take note of this word, ultra. We have nationalism, we have ultra nationalism. Ultra means going above and beyond extreme nationalism. Political ideology characterized by dictatorial leadership. So whenever you see fascism, students, you want to begin to look at the type of governance structure in place. Is it democratic? Is it liberal democracy? Is it socialism in place? Is it communism, for example? And here we will equate communism with dictatorship, essentially, right? Because when you're communist, it's typically one party system and everything is nationalized, and the state has extreme powers into the lives of the citizens and controlling pretty much every apparatus of power. So fascism is a far right, authoritarian, ultra-nationalist political ideology. Now, don't confuse these, students, with patriotism, right? Patriotism is a different idea, a different concept. It simply means you love your country, and everybody should love their country. All of you here sitting here today, if you're, depending on where you come from, if you're an international student, love your country. If you're an American citizen, love your country. If you're a Canadian citizen, love your country, right? So patriotism, nothing absolutely wrong with that idea. And don't confuse that with nationalism. Nationalism simply means that we are better. It's exclusive, right? So nationalism, students, is an exclusive ideology, meaning that we are better than you, essentially. We want to keep our nation the way it is. And we have nationalists that have come up from time to time saying we don't want immigrants. We don't want more people in our country. We like the way our country is. We like our ideas and traditions and our culture and way of life, etc., etc. And it's very exclusive. And if you think about, students, ultra nationalist ideology, you can imagine how exclusive that could very well be. Before we move on, let's take a look at this closely. It says far right, authoritarian, ultra nationalistic political ideology characterized by dictatorial leadership, strong regimentation of society. What does that mean? When we say strong regimentation of society, what does that mean? It means society is stacked, right? It's stacked. This is stacking, right? So we have people here, we have people here, we have people here, we have people here, and so forth. Social hierarchy, it's one of the hallmarks of fascism, ensuring that people are put in their place. And this is how fascist governments dominate the people. They put them in place, and the citizens know their place and know their responsibility in society. Regimentation in this context means, students, please take note, hierarchy of society. Now, when we talk about society in general, we have hierarchy. Every society, students have hierarchy wherever you come from. Any one of you can tell me that you're coming from a country that doesn't have hierarchy. Let me see your hand. If you're coming from a country that has no hierarchy, please raise your hand. And I would like you to tell me how that works. That's what I thought. Nobody has raised their hands because every society has hierarchy. And here we say even in Western societies, they have hierarchy. They have the working class, they have the middle class, they have the upper middle class, they have the upper class and the ultra rich and so forth. That is hierarchy. That's economic hierarchy. In some societies, they have ethnic hierarchy or racial hierarchy and so forth. It's important to understand this concept because this is how fascism works, students. Fascism thrives on hierarchy as a means of control. Please take note. As a means of control. This is how fascist governments control their citizens by putting them in hierarchy. Right? So here we say, right, strong regimentation of society, their economy, enforceable, right, suppression of opposition. Now, what does that mean? Right, so again, a few things happening here. Regimentation of society, we talked about that. The economy is firmly controlled by the government. And when we say the government, typically in a fascist society, students, we are talking about one person. One person calls the shot. One person makes all the decisions. One person is in charge of the country, essentially. Of course, they have people working for them, but those people really typically don't have an input into how the country is governed, right? So the economy is controlled. Every aspect of the economy is controlled. We're talking about electricity, water supply, post office, for example. We're talking about the security apparatus, for example, education, for example, healthcare. Everything is controlled by the government, telecommunication, to ensure that citizens are not communicating with the outside world. And typically, they put a ban on communication to ensure that they have control over what their citizens know, what they read, what they see, and who they interact with beyond their borders. So the economy is controlled fully by the government and forcible suppression of opposition. Hardly any opposition there. They crush opposition because they don't want any opposition to their agenda. They want to rule unopposed. Again, understanding this concept is important, students. Before we move on, let's take another look at this. Fascism is a far right? Far right ideology. This is ideology. Typically, they are not seeing things the way the regular people see things, students. They have extreme ideology that is about to fall off the cliff, so to speak. Ideologies such as how society should look like, how people should live their life, how the economy should look like, what is the work structure of the country, and so forth. Authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology characterized by dictatorial leadership, strong regimentation of society and the economy, and forcible repression. Now, let's move on and take a closer look at this. It typically involves a belief in a natural social order. And that's what I was referring to here moments ago, students. A natural social order. What is a natural social order? Take a minute to think about it. It says here, it typically involves a belief in a natural social order. That means natural social order means it's not an act of government, it's a natural process. People will work and some would not make sufficient money to take care of themselves, so they fall into a category. And others will work and will make good money and they have creativity and ingenuity, they're entrepreneurial and they are able to make money, right? And so people are put into place naturally by their abilities. Please take note of this, by their abilities. So natural social order refers to abilities of people. Let's put that here, abilities, right? Abilities of people within society. And you have in countries like Britain, France, Canada, US, and so forth, they have hierarchy as well. and they have people in different categories. And those categories, especially in a capitalist society, students, those categories are determined by your ability, right, to compete. That is what determines your natural category. It's important to understand this context when we talk about social hierarchy. So, natural social hierarchy is one of the ways that they can control society. Now, when we talk about natural social hierarchy, there's also one that is implemented by society for the purpose of control. And fascism is both of them. If it doesn't happen naturally, it then, of course, there is implementation of some kind of hierarchy for the purpose of control. It typically involves a belief in a natural social hierarchy and the subordination of individual interest for the perceived good of the nation or the race. Right? Again, what does that mean? Let's take a closer look at this. Subordination of individual interests. So, individuals in a society will have interest. Everybody has interest, right? Is that not? You have interest. I have interest. We all have interest. And collectively, our interest typically is aggregated, right, in society, and that becomes the collective interest of the country. But here we are saying, under this form of government, interest of the people is really not important. Only the interest of the government, and more specifically the leader of the government, is taken into account here, right? So it typically involves a belief in the natural social hierarchy and the subordination of individual interest for the perceived good of the nation or race. Now, the nation then takes priority. The nation is everything under fascism. And the leaders typically will say, we do this in the interest of the nation, and everybody must subject themselves to that interest of the nation. And here then we are saying individual interest is really not preferred here, or not encouraged here, I should say, because the nation takes precedence. All right, or the nation or race. It does say here race, students, please take note of this. The nation or race takes priority, right? And here, when we talk about race, we can go back to Italy under Mussolini, Benito Mussolini, who was a supreme maximum leader of that country from 1922 to 1943. He ruled for 21 years, and that was 21 years of fascism. It's a perfect example that we have in that time, as well as contemporarily, right? This is the best example we have of fascism. And of course, we have fascism in other countries around the world as well today. And in every case, race is part of the equation. Please take note of this. Race is part of the equation. What does that mean? It means that race is preferred. It means that race takes precedence. It means that race is all, right? Race is supreme in that space. And again, it's important to understand this idea for fundamental knowledge of the concept of fascism. All right, so finally it says fascism stands in contrast to democracy, liberalism, and socialism. What does that mean? We've discussed in previous lectures, we've discussed democracy, liberalism, and socialism, right? Democracy, we know what that is by now, rule by the people for the people, right? So the people determine their rulers. The people have a say. Power is anchored on the people in a democracy, as we have discussed many times in previous lectures. Power is anchored on the people because they elect the leaders. And if the leaders do not perform, after a certain period of time, they can be voted out of office. And in a extreme situation, that can be recalled even before the term ends, right? And we've seen some examples of that around the world, in Western, especially in Western democracies, where politicians have been recalled, where leaders have been recalled for lack of performance, for one scandal after the other, and so forth. Liberalism, of course, right? Freedom of human rights. We talk about liberty. We talk about ability to determine your economic future, ability to determine your family's place in society, having those rights in society, right to work, right to life, right to health, right to education, right to freedom of association, etc., etc. Liberalism, not present whatsoever in fascist societies. Socialism, where the state takes care of the bigger projects, for example, health and education and social welfare. The state takes care of those things because they see it as essential, right? They see them as essential. Please take note of this. Again, we've discussed socialism as an idea, as a concept, as a form of governance. The state takes care of the bigger programs like healthcare, universal healthcare, because of a belief that everyone is entitled to healthcare. It's not a privilege, it's a right. In the socialist context, education is not a privilege, it's a right in the socialist context. And that's why states take care of education, ensures that children are educated free of charge, K to 12 in most parts of the world, in the US, in Canada, in Europe, and so forth, K to 12, typically free. We're talking about the public schools, typically free because of the belief that children must have that basic education to forge ahead in life. Fascism is contrary to all of these ideas. Please take note. Contrary to all of these ideas. All right, now, let me provide some quick examples of fascism characteristics of fascism. And when you see these characteristics, you know that fascism is in place. You know that a country is tilting towards fascism because they are developing these characteristics. Authoritarianism, we talked about, of course, it is characterized by tough leadership, is characterized by repression of opinions and ideas. There could be no opposition in a fascist type of setup. The fascist party in Italy, for example, ruled for 21 years under Benito Mussolini. And during that time, opposition was non-existent. Nationalism, we've talked about already under the concept and idea of ultra-nationalist political ideology, right? Militarism. Fascist governments are very attracted to military buildups, to military power. Again, Benito Mussolini. And we have the case of North Korea. We see the display of military power from time to time, and the quest for nuclear weapons and the superiority of military might, and etc. We've seen that in North Korea, another example of a fascist state. So, suppression of opposition, social hierarchy we talked about, total economic control of all aspects of society in a fascist regime to ensure that the citizens are subjugated. Because when you allow competition, when you allow entrepreneurism and creativity and ingenuity, well, then you are giving options and choices to the people. And fascist governments don't like competition. Please take note of that, students. They don't like competition. They want to be the ones in control. So telecommunication and electricity and water supply and health and education and social, whatever the case may be, they are the only ones in control. So you get the idea. You get the idea of what fascism means and how it plays out in society. So take note of this, and we're going to be discussing more of different types of governance in lecture, and take a look at how those types of government impact society as well. This is critical for us to understand how fascism works in society.